Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel for another episode of the route learning series recorded within Train Sim World 2. For this episode I wanted to do something a bit different, so we're heading over to Germany to check out the Nahverkehr Dresden route, which is the route from Riesa to Dresden that was one of the routes released in the Train Sim World Rush Hour package last year. The Riesa to Dresden route holds some memories for me from back in the days of Microsoft Train Simulator. As one of the first add-ons I got from Microsoft Train Simulator, it must have been back in around 2002 when I was a teenager, was Pro Train 2, which covered the route from Leipzig through to Dresden. Graphics have certainly come a long way since then, and it looks like the route has also been modernised to the extent I can barely recognise it from the days of Microsoft Train Simulator. The full route from Leipzig to Dresden is of course now available in Train Simulator, so I hope to cover the full run in the future. For this video I'm using timetable mode and have chosen to drive train RE50, which is the 7:45 AM departure from Riesa through to Dresden, set in summer with light clouds. Stops along the way, if I can pronounce them correctly, and please do excuse my German pronunciation, will include Glaubitz, Nunkritz, Priestewitz, Niederau, Weinböhla, Coswig, Radebuel Ost, Dresden Neustadt, Dresden Mitte, and finally Dresden Hauptbahnhof. The total distance for this journey is around 55 kilometers, or just under 35 miles. As I've not done anything loco hauled for a long time, the train that I've chosen to drive for this journey is hauled by the BR146.2 electric locomotive, operated by DB Regio. The BR146 locos were constructed between 1997 and 2002, with a total of 31 of these locomotives produced. They have a bow wheel formation, meaning that there are 2 axles and 4 wheels on each bogie of the locomotive. Each loco is 18.9 metres, or around 62 feet in length, and they weigh around 82 tonnes. They're designed to run on the 15 kilovolts AC overhead electrification system found in Germany, and they have a maximum power output of 4.2 megawatts, or 5,632 horsepower, with a maximum tractive effort of 300 kilonewtons, or 67,443 pounds of force. They have a maximum speed of 160 kilometers per hour, which is around 100 miles per hour, and we should be able to get up to that for a short section of the journey today, with the speed limit over most of the route being 120 kilometers per hour, or around 75 miles per hour. Okay, so I've just jumped into the cab of the BR146.2 to set up ready for departure, but just before I do the setup procedure, I wanted to issue a correction to the pronunciation for the place that we're departing from. I've called it Riesa, but it's just come to my understanding that it's probably pronounced Riesa. So I do apologise for that mistake. The previous bit's already recorded and I didn't want to re-record it, but you're going to hear me say Riesa one more time just after we depart away from here, because I actually record this guide to setting up the train at the end after I've done the main journey rather than before, so yeah, it's pronounced Riesa I believe rather than Riesa. So now that's out of the way, let's quickly set up here ready for departure. So the first thing we need to do is insert the reversing handle by clicking, and I'm going to move that to the forward position and open the left hand side doors with the Y key. Okay, now that I've done that, we're going to turn on the PZB and the CIFA safety system. So press Control and Enter, and that turns on PZB, and you can see 85 and PZB has come on the main screen in front of us there. Now, I'm not going to explain how PZB works on this journey, beyond what I'm actually doing when responding to it as we're driving along. If you'd like a full guide to PZB and LZB, then I've already made one within Train Simulator, and what I described there completely applies in Train Sim World as well. So I'm going to put that the link to that, should I say, in the video description. Please check that out if you want a better understanding of the signalling system. Now I'm going to press Shift and Enter in a moment to turn on the CIFA system. Just to mention, first of all, you can see the word CIFA is just to the right of that computerized display in front of us. When I press Shift and Enter to turn it on, CIFA goes out. Now this is like a driver safety device. I believe it's about every 30 seconds or so the light will come on, so you'll see the word CIFA there, and if you haven't pressed Q to acknowledge it, then after a few seconds the train will say CIFA to you, and I believe it will say CIFA up to 3 times. And if you still haven't pressed Q to acknowledge it, then the emergency brakes will be applied. Now, I was made aware when I was doing my last German video last year that with the SIFA system, ideally you should be resetting it before it says SIFA to you. And I do try and do that on this journey, but at times I might be looking down at my notes or just don't think to press Q because I'm not quite used to driving with this, because it's a bit different to the driver safety device in the UK. So you are going to hear SIFA spoken quite a few times on this journey, but I will certainly acknowledge it before we get a penalty brake application or anything like that. So in front of us on the left hand side of that computerized display, we've got the speedometer measured in kilometers per hour. What I'm going to do now is press Ctrl and R to turn on the AFB control, which is the cruise control for this train.
AFB, AFB, AFB.
Now that I've done that, you can see there's a little diamond that's appeared on the outside of the speedometer, and that shows the speed that we're set to. So the lever on the far left of the cab is the AFB lever. If I increase that now with the R key, you'll now see the bug on the outside of the speedometer increases, and use the F key to decrease it. So I'm going to set this to 80 kilometers per hour, which is the current speed limit here at Riesa station. Now, just to mention, this theoretically can brake. It controls the brakes if you're on downgrades, and also you can accelerate with it, but I wouldn't recommend using it to do too big of a speed reduction. I prefer to use the throttle and brake to do that manually, and then move the AFB control to a lower speed. I would also point out that it's not 100% accurate, and sometimes, especially if you're on a downgrade, it will allow you to slip 1 or 2 kilometers per hour over the speed limit, and you might think, hey, big deal, it's only 1 or 2, but that's fine until, say, you're under 45 kilometer restricted signalling under the PZB system, and the train slips up to 46 kilometers per hour. Then you'll get a penalty brake application, the emergency brakes will go on, and the train will come to a complete stop before you're able to move again. So if you know there's a steep downgrade coming, I recommend setting this potentially to 5 kilometers per hour below the actual speed limit, just to ensure that you don't end up breaking that speed limit. So next to the AFB control is the throttle control, which is a smoothly controlled throttle, rather than notched or anything like that. So you've got the initial notch there, but beyond that you can control it very precisely and smoothly. Just to explain something and how it works with the braking system here. So to the right hand side of the cab, we've got the braking systems. You've got the air braking lever, the dynamic braking lever, and the locomotive brake lever. And that's all from left to right. If you use the standard key for controlling the brakes for Train Simulator and Train Sim World, it moves both the dynamic brake lever and the air brake lever at the same time. Now you can see here that this is in fact, get my words right, this is in fact notched. So you've got notches from F to 1A, 1B, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, VB, which is full service. And at the very bottom on the air brake lever you've got SB, which is emergency setting. I'm not sure exactly what notches they use in real life, how far they go on this brake lever. I try to really not go above notches 4 to 5, but there might be a couple of points on this journey where I do need to increase the braking further as we're not slowing down quite quick enough or something. When you release the brakes don't actually fully release until you've applied power. So if you look at the top of the 2 gauges now on the right hand side of the cab, which are the brake gauges, the top one is the brake cylinder pressure gauge, which is measured in bars, currently pointing at around 4. The higher that needle is pointing, the harder the brakes are applied, and when that's pointing at 0, the brakes are fully released. You can't use this to judge how hard you're braking when you're travelling along normally, for the simple reason that the locomotive tends to use the dynamic braking first and only uses the air braking at low speed. But yes, so when you're departing away from a station, you move the brake handle to the release position, the doors are fully closed, that needle will drop to around 3, then you apply power, and only after you've applied power will that needle then gradually drop to 0 and the brakes will fully release. And so this will prevent a rollback, and it allows the train to start off quite smoothly for the passengers. So yeah, just to the right, as I said, on the right of the 3 levers here, we've got the locomotive brake, which controls the brakes on the locomotive independently of the brakes on the rest of the train, and we're not going to be using that on this journey today. Continuing around the cab, on the far right hand side now, we've got the horn control or horn switch, which is a 2-tone horn controllable with the spacebar and the N key. And I have to say that that lower tone sounds really off-key and really out of tune. Now I'm going to set the destination display at the top here, so I'm just going to click on there. Oh, wrong way. We've got Dresden Hauptbahnhof, click OK, and that sets up the destination displays on the outside of the train. It looks to me like there's a space for the destination on the top of the locomotive at the front, but for some reason I can't get it to show up. I don't know if that's because it's how it's been simulated within Train Simulator, or if it doesn't show in real life, or I'm just making a mistake. So please do let me know in the comments if you know how to get that destination display onto the front of the loco. The final thing I wanted to talk about here is the sort of accelerometer and brake gauge there. So to the right of the speedometer you've got a gauge with 0 and then numbers each side, on one side going to 140, on the other side going to 70. So when we start moving and we power up, then going up from 0 towards the right, it will turn blue, and that's showing how much power we're applying. So that will show you that we're applying power as well. Meanwhile, when we're braking, that will go back to 0, and then it will go to the left-hand side, and it will display yellow, and that will indicate that the brakes are applied. I'm not the best at reading this thing, but I just wanted to mention it as you're going to see it in action on this journey. So now we've set up the train ready for departure. The headlights are already set up themselves. Let's just take another quick look outside the train and depart away from Riesa and head out towards Dresden Hauptbahnhof. As we depart away from Riesa, the speed limit here is 80 km per hour, though very soon going up to 120 km per hour. And at this point we've got 5.4 km to go to our first stop, which is Glaubitz. The speed limit's now increasing to 120, and we can accelerate just as we've crossed this bridge here. At the set of crossover points that are coming up in a moment, we've got around 4 kilometres, which is around 2.5 miles to go. One of the things that I find with German routes is I have a much higher reliance on the kilometre posts that you can see every 200 metres apart on the overhead catenary posts here. They do help you very much to know exactly where you are, and I think it's a great idea to have them there. But I do notice that they're not 100% accurate, as some of them seem to have been duplicated a bit further up. You'll see what I mean, I'll explain that.
Sifa.
So along here now at kilometre post 70.6, which is the one after the next one, we've got 1.6 kilometres or 1 mile to go. I'm going to shut off the power at kilometre post 71.0, and I'm going to apply the brakes between steps 3 and 4 at kilometre post 71.2. If idled the power now at kilometre post 71.0, and we're just coming up on 71.2 now. Here at Glaubitz station, we want to stop at the end of the platform. So we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Glaubitz, the speed limit here is still 120 km per hour, with around 2.6 kilometers to go to the next stop, which is Nunkritz. So along here now, I'm going to idle the power at kilometre post 73.6, and I'm going to brake just after kilometre post 73.8. So we've just reached 73.6 now. And we've just reached 73.8, so let's make a brake application. I'll go up to step 4 initially and then reduce if we're braking too hard. Once again here at Nunkritz, we need to stop at the end of the platform. Now slowing down a bit too quickly, I've had to cut right back on the braking for a moment. We should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Nunkritz, the speed limit is still 120 km per hour, and we've got around 9.9 kilometers to go to the next stop, which is Priestewitz.
Siefer.
Now passing the site of what appears to be an old closed station. I'm not sure what station this is, so if anybody does know, then please let me know in the comments. And at this point we've got around 700 metres to go to an increase in the speed limit to 130 kilometres per hour. So just here at this signal with the 13 on it and then the 13 speed post just after it, we're now cleared to accelerate up to 130 kilometres per hour, which is just over 80 miles per hour. Passing a warning for a decrease in the speed limit back to 120 kilometres per hour. Now that warning is 1.4 kilometres from the limit itself. We can just continue close to 130 for now. I see that the speed set's holding us, or the AFB should I say, is holding us at around 126. I'm going to shut off the power now at kilometre post 80.0 and the train will just coast down to 120 in time for that speed limit. We're now down to 120 and we're now passing the 120 speed post. So I'm now going to cut the AFB back to 120 and apply some power to ensure that we don't lose any more speed. So as we approach Priestewitz, there's going to be a 60 km per hour speed limit which is enforced by the signals. So of course PZB will be involved here. As I said earlier, I'm not going to go through the full details of the PZB signalling system, but I will explain what I'm doing at the time. We're now coming up on a signal which is warning us of the 60 km speed restriction coming into force at the following signal. On the HUD it shows you actually a bit beyond the following signal, and it's definitely the following signal where that speed restriction will be enforced in reality. So I've just acknowledged the PZB by pressing the page down key. We've now got 23 seconds to get down below 85 km per hour. So we're doing a little bit below 60 now. We're just approaching the signal where the 60 speed restriction comes into force, and the station will be coming up in a moment, immediately as we've crossed the junction to the right. So if you were following on the HUD, then the 60 speed limit comes into force at this junction rather than the signal that we've just passed. Here at Priestewitz station, I want to stop just beyond the final passenger information screen, which is just coming up on the right. I'm also going to reduce the AFB control to 60, as that speed limit will be enforced for a little while after departure, but we should now be stopped in just about the right place. As we departed away from Priestewitz, the speed limit was still 60 km per hour, though it is soon going back up to 120 km per hour, with around 9 km to go to the next stop, which is Niederau.
Sifa.
So once we've crossed this junction, the speed limit's back up to 120 km per hour, and we can accelerate just as we've crossed this little bridge just here.
Sifa.
At kilometre post 88.4 that's coming up just here, we've got around 6 kilometres to go. realise this is the first German route that I've covered in Train Sim World or Train Simulator of my comeback. Of course, it's only the second video I've covered in Train Sim World, but I just wanted to say there will be more videos in other countries coming in the future. I know people have been asking me about this recently, but I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that there definitely will be more videos coming in other countries. I'm not going to stick to only UK routes and trains, although that's always going to be the primary videos that I make will be based in the UK. But especially as I start to run out of new UK journeys, I will probably increase the number of videos that I'm making in other countries. What I'm looking out for along here now is going to be kilometre post 94.6. At that point I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast, and then I'm going to apply the brakes approaching the next signal. I was also again looking at Tram Sim yesterday. I'm very interested to make some videos in Tram Sim. It's a different game, of course. Trams are a bit different to trains, but it's still on rails, so I still feel that it keeps in keeping with the theme of the channel. I know I mentioned it last year before I took my break, but yeah, I would be interested to make some videos in Tram Sim, but I think the style would have to be a little bit different because the driving style is totally different, and I don't need to go through some of the information I give in these videos. So yeah, we're at kilometre post 94.6, power is shut off, we're now approaching the signal, so let's just apply the brakes. We'll go up to step 4 braking initially, and then I'll adjust that as required. At Niederau station, we want to stop at the H sign at the end of the platform. I'm just going to give us an extra step of braking as I'm not sure that we're slowing down quite quick enough. We should now be stopped in just about the right place. As we depart away from Niederau here, the speed limit is still 120 km per hour, with 1.8 km to go to the next stop, which is Weinböhla. In a moment you're going to see what I mean about the kilometre post not being completely accurate. So we're going to see kilometre post 96.8 twice, so we're just passing 96.6 now. And then we're going to have 96.8, and we need to idle and brake at 96.8 number 2, which will be the next one, also labelled as 96.8. So a bit of a correction that needs making to the route there. Oh, I was pressing the brake release button by accident there, not looking at where I was pressing on the keyboard, so I've had to brake a little bit harder to make sure that I'm going to get that speed down in time. Now we've got a warning or caution signal here, so I'm going to have to acknowledge the PZB. As it happens, we won't need to do any actions because we're slowing down for a station. What it does mean is, because we're going to be stopping under the 1000 Hz magnet, we're going to be forced into supervised speed mode of 45 km per hour. And here at Weinböhla we need to stop at the end of the platform. We should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Weinböhla, the speed limit here is 120 km per hour. Well, that's the track speed limit, with around 4 km to go to the next stop at Coswig. But as already mentioned, we are currently limited to 45 km per hour due to the restricted monitoring that we're under with the signalling, due to the fact that we stopped whilst we were being monitored by the PZB system. So I've set the AFB control to 40 km per hour temporarily. You could set it to 45, but I just don't trust it. When I did that in some of the practice runs, we reached 45, and I think it might have slipped to like 45.5, 46, and I was forced into a penalty brake application, which is something that you want to ideally try and avoid. We should be able to release from restricted monitoring as we reach the upcoming signal. So there we are, I've released from restricted monitoring, and now we can accelerate up towards 120 km per hour, though there will soon be a reduction in the speed limit down to 100 km per hour. We're now passing the warning for the km per hour speed limit, so I'm not really going to accelerate much above that. In fact, I'm going to cut the power back now, and I'm just going to cut the AFB back to 100. On some of the practice run, well, the last practice run I did, something very strange happened here. I slowed down for the 100, I was slightly too late, but then the locomotive got a big bang from the rear. The speedometer suddenly read 350 km per hour, and yeah, it was all very bizarre. We didn't actually accelerate, but the speedometer seemed to think that we were doing. So the speed limit's just dropped to 100 km per hour now, with around 2 km to go. What I'm going to do along here, I'm going to idle the power at kilometre post 101.0, and then I'm going to apply the brakes at the next signal. So we've just reached 101.0, power is shut off, and now we're coming up on the signal, and I'll apply the brakes just as we reach it. The speed limit does increase back up to 120 km per hour just before Coswig station. So here at Coswig, I'm just looking at the platform shelters on the right hand side there. I want to stop just beyond the final of the shelters, which is just coming up. And this should be about the right place to stop. As we depart away from Coswig, the speed limit is now back up to 120 km per hour, with around 7.4 km to go to the next stop, which is Radebuel Ost.
Sifa, Sifa.
In a moment, the fast lines which left us between Nunkritz and Priestewitz are going to rejoin us on the right hand side, and we will be crossing over to the fast lines. In fact, I think they're just crossing over us here, but as I was saying, we will be crossing over to the fast lines after our next stop. We're now coming up on Radebuel Ost station. That one's a bit of a mouthful to try and pronounce. We'll shortly be coming up on Radebuel Ost station with around 3.6 kilometres to go. Shortly be coming up on Radebuel Weinböhla station with around 1.6 kilometres or 1 mile to go. So along here now at kilometre post 28.4 I'm going to shut off the power and I'm going to apply the brakes for our stop at kilometre post 28.2. So we're just past 28.4, we're now coming up on 28.2. And I've now got the brakes on for Radebuel Ost. I need to keep an eye on the signals here. As I can see, there's a yellow signal, so I'm going to have to acknowledge the PZB system. And that signal is because we've got a red signal protecting the fast lines that we'll be crossing over to just after departing away from our stop.
Sifa, Sifa.
And here at Radebuel Ost, I want to stop right near the end of the platform. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Radebuel Ost, the speed limit, well, the track speed is 120 km per hour, but we're under restricted monitoring with the signalling again. They're limiting us to 45 km per hour. We've got around 5.4 km to go to the next stop at Dresden Neustadt. and there's not much point in really accelerating much beyond 25 kilometers per hour here, as we're about to pass the 500 Hz magnet for the red signal coming up just ahead. And at the 500 Hz magnet, that means we've got 153 meters at which to get our speed down to 25 kilometers per hour.
Sifa, Sifa.
In fact, I'm just going to slow us down a little bit beyond that, as I just don't trust the train not to coast up and end up with a penalty brake application. So we're now going to be forced to stop at this signal and wait until the main line is clear. I think there's a couple more trains to pass yet, and then we'll be able to cross out over onto the main line with a 50 km per hour speed limit at the junction. So now I'm just going to stop in front of the signal. Let's just show a couple of shots outside of the train's passing, and then we can hopefully depart soon and head out towards Dresden Neustadt. As you just saw, the signal cleared there as the ICE was passing, so now we can start accelerating away from the signal to a speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour, which is being enforced for the junction coming up just ahead. So we'll increase the AFB to 50, and we won't accelerate above that for now. As soon as we've crossed the junction, the speed limit will then be increasing further to 160 kilometers per hour, or 100 miles per hour. I've also just released this from restricted monitoring that we entered from our stop at Radebuel Ost, so we will now be cleared to go straight up to 160 as soon as we've crossed over to the far right hand track. So we're cleared to accelerate up towards 160 as soon as we've reached this overbridge just coming up.
Sifa, Sifa.
The rear of the train should now be clear of the junction, and so let's start to accelerate. We're not going to be able to do 160 for very long, so I'm going to make the most of being able to travel at this train's maximum possible speed. We're now passing Dresden Neustadt station on the left.
Sifa, Sifa.
At the next station that we pass, which will be Dresden Pieschen, or Pieschen, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, we've got around 1.6 kilometres to go to an upcoming 80 km per hour speed limit. That speed limit is monitored, so you can get a penalty brake application if you don't slow down for it quick enough. And also the speed warning itself has a PZB magnet activated. So you have to get below 80 kilometers per hour within 23 seconds, but I found that even if you aim for 23, you may still get a penalty brake application as you're just not meeting the expected brake curve programmed into the system. So we're just passing now that Dresden Pieschen station. I'm shutting off the power at this point to allow the train to coast, and I'm preparing to slow down. We're just reaching that that 80 warning now, so I'm already braking to bring our speed down to make sure that we do meet the expected brake curve, and I'm braking very hard now to bring our speed off rapidly. And now we're down to close to 80. I've released the brakes. I'm going to reduce the AFB control down to 80 kilometers per hour, and I'm going to give us some power as we've lost just a little bit too much speed there. And the speed limit drops to 80 at this speed post just here.
Sifa, Sifa.
At the 80 km/h speed post, we had around 1 kilometre to go. And we're now passing Dresden Bischofplatz. Or Bischofplatz, one of the two. You can now see the large overall roof at Dresden Neustadt coming up just ahead. At this point I'm going to shut off the power and start to apply the brakes to make sure that we're slowing down in time. Probably entering the platform a little bit on the quick side here, so I've made a fairly hard brake application, but the speed's coming off very nicely. Here at Dresden Neustadt I want to stop at the second H sign under the roof.
Sifa.
So just past the first H sign for trains 120 metres long, and we're now coming up on the second H sign, which I believe is for trains around 160 metres long. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we departed away from Dresden Neustadt, the speed limit was 80 km/h with around 1.6 kilometres or 1 mile to go to the next stop, which is Dresden Mitte. Now we're doing around 80 km/h. I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. I'm going to apply the brakes shortly after kilometre post 65.2, just before we cross some points over to the left for Dresden Mitte station.
Sifa, Sifa.
So here's 65.2. We're about to cross some points to the left. I'm just going to apply the brakes now to bring our speed off. Here at Dresden Mitte station, I want to stop at the end of the platform. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Dresden Mitte, the speed limit here is 80 km/h, with 800 metres to go to an upcoming 60 km/h speed limit, and 1.8 kilometres to go to our next and final stop, which is Dresden Hauptbahnhof. So at the signal just there, we had a warning for that upcoming 60 limit, and I had to acknowledge the PZB control there. So the 60 limit comes into force at the next signal. I've accelerated to just a little bit beyond 60, but I don't really want to accelerate too much. The signal you can see just coming up isn't actually a signal, it's a reminder or warning of what's coming up in a moment. So we don't have to be down to 60 here. But I am just going to apply some light braking now, as you can see the second flashing green signal. So the first one we're just about to pass. The second one there is where the speed limit comes into force, and it's warning us of a further reduction in the speed limit down to 40 kilometers per hour. And once again I had to reset the PZB. I wasn't sure if I had quite done it in the right place, so I pressed the button twice, which is why you heard him say Zugbeeinflussung twice. And the 40 km per hour speed limit is coming into force at this signal just here. So I just ensured that I got down to 40 in time. You are forced to also acknowledge the PZB again at that signal. Now I'm going to cut the AFB control to 35 km per hour, and the reason for that is there's a very steep downgrade coming into the station, and it just can't quite hold you at 40. You will end up breaking the speed limit if you don't set it to 35. I've got the power in idle now, and I'm just allowing the train to coast due to the upcoming very steep down gradient. And you can see the huge overall roof at Dresden Hauptbahnhof coming up just ahead. So we're now on that downgrade. The AFB is trying to control our speed here. You can see with the display there that the yellow's going up and down as it's managing the brakes. It's managed to actually keep us well at 35 or below, which I'm surprised by, because, as I say, it couldn't keep us at 40 or below when I gave that a go on the practice runs through this journey. I've stopped maybe a little bit further back from the buffers than I intended, but still, we've arrived at Dresden Hauptbahnhof. I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook with the link to my Facebook page in the video description. Also, if you'd like to sponsor this channel or donate to this channel, then please visit my Patreon page for more information, again with the link to that in the video description. And finally, if you're interested in my travel or wildlife photography, then please check out PTG Travelling on Instagram. Once again, thank you for watching.